Jorge, a 76-year-old man, lived on a simple farm he had inherited from his parents, surrounded by old trees and stories forgotten by time. Despite his age, he still took care of property alone, waking early every day to sweep leaves and feed the chickens. On a particularly cold morning, while removing fallen branches after a storm, he noticed something metallic buried in the brush at the edge of the yard. As he approached, he saw the silhouette of an old car, completely overtaken by rust. Had it always been there? And how had he never noticed it? A mystery seemed to awaken at that moment. The car was leaning to one side, with flat tires and jammed doors, as if it had been abandoned there decades earlier. The original paint was almost entirely gone, and the hood was covered in moss, giving the vehicle a ghostly appearance. Curious, Jorge wiped a patch of fog glass with his hand and tried to see inside. He saw only shadows and a torn seat, but something inside him whispered that there was more. He decided to grab tools from the shed and return to try opening at least the glove compartment. His heart beat faster than usual. Perhaps from suspense, perhaps from the inexplicable feeling that he was about to discover something important. With a screwdriver and an old hammer, Jorge returned to the car and began prying the passenger door. The rusted metal gave in slowly, groaning as if protesting. After several minutes of effort, the door opened with a sharp crack. A strong smell of mold escaped, making the old man cough. He turned on a small flashlight and illuminated the dust-covered dashboard. Then he saw the glove compartment, slightly open, as if something inside had tried to escape. With a careful touch, he pulled the cover down, and in that instant his world turned upside down. Inside the glove compartment was a letter folded several times, protected by an old plastic sleeve. The paper was yellow with age, but still readable. Jorge removed the letter carefully and sat on the edge of the car to read it. The handwriting was firm, almost impatient, as if the person had written in a hurry before something happened. The envelope bore a familiar name, Antonio Ferreira, the brother Jorge hadn't seen in over 30 years. A chill ran through his body. Antonio had disappeared without a trace. And that car, could it be his? Jorge's mind spun as his hands trembled over the paper. He opened the letter slowly, taking a deep breath. The first sentence made his heart race. Jorge, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't come back. His eyes instantly filled with tears. The letter went on to mention a dangerous discovery, something Antonio had stumbled upon that would change everything if exposed. It also warned Jorge not to trust anyone, not even authorities, and said the car held the proof everyone was looking for. Jorge pressed the paper to his chest, overwhelmed. Sadness, fear, longing, and above all, the suffocating feeling that the story was far from over. Confused and shaken, Jorge took the letter inside and spent the whole morning rereading it. The message felt incomplete, as if something crucial was missing. He returned to the car to search for more clues. The back seat was covered in dirt and leaves, but beneath it, he found a small metal briefcase. The lock had been broken, as if forced long ago. Inside there was only a notebook with pages torn out and an old ID card belonging to his brother. The notebook contained codes, names, and addresses, information that clearly didn't belong to an ordinary person. Jorge felt the weight of danger settling over him. Trying to understand the magnitude of what he had found, Jorge turned to his neighbor Luis, a 32-year-old who often helped with heavy tasks around the farm. Luis had a mysterious past, but he was polite and always willing to assist. When Jorge showed him the letter and notebook, Luis went pale. He recognized some of the names listed. People involved in an old financial scandal, one that had never been fully explained. Jorge froze. Had his brother been involved? Or had he become a victim of something much bigger? The doubt only increased the weight of the discovery. The next day, Jorge went to town to search for old records involving his brother. He visited the police station, the municipal library, and even the registry office. But the more he asked, the more he noticed people's suspicious glances. Antonio's disappearance had never been formally investigated, merely archived due to lack of evidence. To Jorge, that meant only one thing. Someone had silenced everything. When he returned home, he found fresh footprints near the rusted car. His blood ran cold. Someone had been there while he was gone, and now Jorge was sure the secret his brother tried to protect was still in danger. Luis suggested hiding everything again before anyone grew suspicious. Moving the car could attract attention, so they left it where it was. But there was another concern. If someone had been searching for these materials in the past, they might still be looking. Jorge began to feel the forest watching him, as if the quiet land hid more secrets than it revealed. That night, he locked all the doors, something he hadn't done in years. He lay down but couldn't sleep. The letter echoed in his mind like a constant warning, a desperate plea for help from the past. Fearful but determined, Jorge and Luis began dismantling the car piece by piece. They removed seats, panels, even parts of the dashboard. Hidden inside a cavity behind the glove compartment, they found a small portable recorder. Despite the rust, it still powered on. When Jorge pressed play, Antonio's voice filled the air, shaky, desperate, but steady. He mentioned names, dates, and a massive crime involving powerful politicians of the time. And his final words made Jorge feel the ground vanish beneath him. If something happens to me, take care of this, brother. I trust only you. The revelation left Jorge speechless. It was as if his brother were speaking directly to him through time. Luis was equally stunned, realizing they had uncovered something capable of reigniting an old buried case. They spent hours replaying the recording and taking notes. Antonio's voice sounded weak, as if he recorded it while running or hiding. Jorge's heart clenched as he listened to his brother's final plea, knowing he had never returned. It felt like life was giving him one last chance to honor Antonio's memory. But problems soon surfaced. On the third day after finding the recorder, a black car was spotted driving slowly along the road leading to the farm. Watching from the window, Jorge saw that the occupants were not locals. They seemed to be searching for something or someone. We suggested hiding the recorder in a less obvious place. So Jorge buried it in a metal box beneath the floor of the old tool shed. If they were being watched, they had to act with caution. Danger was approaching silently and inevitably. That night, while trying to sleep, Jorge heard footsteps in the yard. He stood slowly, grabbed his flashlight, and slipped out the back door. When he lit up the yard, he saw the shadow of a man running toward the woods. His heart nearly stopped. Someone was indeed trying to reach the rusted car. He rushed back inside, trembling, locked the doors, and woke Luis, who had been asleep on the couch. They stayed awake the rest of the night, listening to every sound of the forest, two involuntary guardians of a secret heavier than gold. The next day, Luis insisted they go to the police, but Jorge feared the authorities might be involved. Antonio's letter was clear: don't trust anyone. Those words echoed like a sentence. Instead, they decided to digitize everything, scanning the letter, the notebook codes, and copying the audio to multiple USB drives. If anything happened, the truth wouldn't be lost. Jorge felt like he was waging a silent war against invisible enemies. An emotional weight grew heavier on his aging shoulders. The following days were filled with constant tension. The black car returned twice, always keeping its distance. Jorge and Luis took turns watching the yard, never letting the old car out of sight for long. One day, while checking the trunk, Jorge found a small ring wedged between cracks. Antonio's ring. He would recognize it anywhere. Holding it, he felt a powerful mix of sorrow and determination. His brother had left that clue on purpose, and now it was up to Jorge to see it through. Eventually, Jorge realized he couldn't keep the story hidden forever. The recording, the letter, the evidence, it was all too significant to ignore. Luis suggested contacting a respected investigative journalist known in the region. After much thought, Jorge agreed. When the journalist came to the farm and listened to Antonio's recording, her eyes widened. She knew she was facing a story capable of shaking not just a city, perhaps the entire country. The journalist spent the next few days gathering documents, taking photos, and recording Jorge's testimony. But she also brought a harsh truth. Once the story went public, Jorge would become the center of attention. He would face real danger. The old man stared out the window for a long moment, thinking of his quiet life. But then he remembered his brother's desperate plea. He couldn't back down. He agreed to do whatever was necessary, to bring the truth to light. With all the evidence prepared, the journalist assembled a complete dossier. Before publishing, she contacted a few trusted authorities to ensure Jorge's protection. The news leaked faster than expected, and that very night, the black car returned, but this time, it didn't stay on the road. It broke through the property and headed straight toward the rusty car. Jorge and Luis ran for safety as the vehicle accelerated. Suddenly, a group of police officers appeared, blocking any escape. The confrontation was quick. The intruders were arrested, and Jorge finally felt the crushing weight lifting from his chest. The report aired 2 days later, revealing a long-buried corruption network and broadcasting Antonio's final recorded words. The country was shocked by the case's depth. Jorge received special protection for having brought everything to light, and although uneasy about the attention, he felt he had fulfilled his duty. People from everywhere sent messages of support, and Antonio's memory was finally honored. The rusted car was removed from the yard and taken as official evidence, closing a chapter that had remained hidden for over 3 decades. Months later, life returned to relative calm for Jorge. He still wore Antonio's ring, now hanging from a simple chain around his neck. Sometimes he walked across the spot where the car had sat for so many years and remembered his brother's voice asking for help. He knew the truth had finally emerged, not for money or fame, but for justice. Looking at the horizon, he felt a gentle peace. Deep down, he knew that wherever Antonio was, he could finally rest. And so, the old man who found a rusted car in his yard became the guardian of a truth that should never have been buried.